everyone. Welcome to Confidently Be You. My name is Jennifer Slobovich, and today my special guest is Jes Dickerson, who is a life coach and YouTuber. Jes, welcome to Confidently Be You.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here. So before we get started, I want to share a little bit about how I found you. We're both a part of this Facebook group for creators, and you had posted a video about creator burnout, which resonated with me so much. And I was like, I'd love to connect with her and talk about creator burnout. So here you are. And so that's the topic I would love to dive into today. But before we get into that topic, I want to first get a chance for me and the audience to get to know a little bit more about you. So what inspired you to get into the work that you do?
Well, I am a burnout coach. So I help people that are stressed, they're on their way to burnout, or they're burnt out and they're just trying to get out. Some people don't even realize that's what's going on, which is what happened to me. I actually went through burnout and it took me a long time to figure out what was going on. Probably could have been healing it a lot sooner if I had known what was wrong. And once you're there, it takes ages to climb your way out. It's kind of like hanging on the edge of a cliff. It's going to be a lot easier if you can to pull yourself back up the edge, but once you slide down, it takes a lot of work to get back out again. And I went through all of this researching and just dug myself out my own way. Again, probably would have been faster if I had had some help. And that led me to becoming a life coach. I realized that this wasn't just me. I, in fact, had a couple of friends that were going through it that I found through this whole process. And it just spoke to me. I couldn't believe that there's really just not that many resources out there about it, and that it's kind of hard to identify in yourself. You say, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so stressed, I'm so burnt out, but we don't necessarily acknowledge what that means and what happens when we really truly are burned out. And then nobody helps us get back. It's, oh, you're burnt out, welcome to America, that's life.
Right.
So I came to this wanting to help other people, and I started coaching, which was my way of getting there. And I started learning how to do public speaking to help get my message to a further audience. And I was helping women one-on-one, and it just wasn't enough for me. I was hearing the same stories over and over and over again. I was like, there's got to be a way to help these mostly women get through this easier, because it's very isolating. It's almost expected that you're going to get burnt out, you're going to be stressed, and that you better handle it yourself. Like, just get over it. You don't need anything. To some extent, therapy is getting better about it, that people seek out therapy. We're a little more accepting of that kind of thing, but mostly we're expected to suffer in silence and fix it ourselves. And acknowledging that you have it and that other people have it, and listening to other people's struggles and how they dealt with it, that is so much more effective a way to get through it. And so that's kind of the community that I'm trying to build with my YouTube channel, with the people that I talk to, with things that I'm working on, like courses that also have group coaching associated with them, in order to just help people realize it's not just you, which is something I say in almost every one of my videos. It's okay, it's not just you, because we need to all accept that we're all going through this, particularly right now, and that there is a way through, but it doesn't have to be all your job to get out of it.
Yeah, I can resonate with everything you just said. I think because we're so used to being burned out, it's like our normal operating system. At least it was mine for a very long time, until you start feeling like you're about to fall apart. Like, I have a high threshold for stress. So I just suck it up, keep going. Oh, I can take on one more thing. Oh, and we have this mindset that relaxing is a waste of time. And especially if you're a mom and you're working, or you're juggling a business and you're like pulled in a million directions, I don't have time. And like a lot of moms that I've worked with, they think self-care is a luxury, and it's a necessity. Because
Absolutely.
An analogy I use a lot of the time with clients that I work with is we have no problem recharging our phones. If the battery's about to go down, we'll plug it in. And we got to do the same thing. And self-care is not about a luxury. It's not about bubble baths. It's about, you need to recharge yourself or you're going to fall apart. And it's not a good place to be. And so it's so important to be able to help others with that, because that also is why I created this channel. And I also do the work that I do is when you show other people that, hey, you're not alone, you're not the only one who struggled with this, and then you share little things that you've learned, those little things are actually the big things that can make a difference in someone's life. And with me, the overwhelm, I being such a people pleaser most of my life, that just led me down to massive overwhelm. And when I started to do therapy and 11 years ago now, I guess, yeah, almost 12 years ago, when I first went into therapy to address a lot of things that were happening in my life, it was like a cloud had lifted after a month later, and I started realizing all these different things. And you don't realize that what you're used to is not actually what's good for you.
Right. Absolutely. I was watching a health documentary one time, and the guy said that if you were a smoker for 20 years, you probably don't notice how much pain you're in because you're so used to it. But if you were a non-smoker and you woke up feeling like that smoker from 20 years, you would immediately go to the hospital because something was incredibly wrong with you and you didn't know what it is. And it's the same thing with stress. It might not have necessarily the lung implications, but the whole body damage, the slow progression until it's too much for you to handle is 100% how burnout works.
Absolutely. And it can be deadly. And not being dramatic at all. My mom, she died of a heart attack back in 2007. And she kept pushing things off. Oh, I'll do this one day. I'll take care of this one day, one day, one day, one day. And then one day never came. And that was a huge wake-up call for myself. And she, when we don't take care of our health and we keep pushing ourselves to a breaking point, maybe it works for a while, but 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of stress can accumulate. And of course, it impacts the habits that we do to take care of ourselves in other ways. So, yeah, I like your smoker analogy. That's a really good analogy and about that. So what challenges did you overcome while building your business?
I think it's obviously there's all the business building stuff. You don't know what you don't know when you get into it. But I think the hardest thing, people were like, well, if you coach for 100 hours, you'll find your niche. I was already pretty clear about what my niche was. It was more about, and it still is, more about reaching the people that need it. Because the people that need it may not know that they need help, which is kind of where I was. Or they may know that they need help, but they don't know with what. So they don't even know what they're looking for. And the fact that the reason that you're burned out is because you're so busy. So the thought of taking on one more thing sounds impossible. And probably you're so busy because you're not taking care of yourself, which is why you're burned out. So you're unlikely to go seek out something for yourself that is going to take time. And so that's one of the big reasons that I kind of transitioned from the one-on-one coaching, because it is an hour a week. And if you're, say, a new mom or you're struggling with taking care of yourself, that feels very selfish. And absolutely, you should be selfish in that way, 100%. But some people just cannot get past that. They are so willing, and a lot of us are, we're just so willing to give up our time for someone else, especially family, that we just lose track of taking care of ourselves. So trying to reach this specific group is very difficult. And I found it much easier to reach this group with videos, with the YouTube channel. I almost never make a video over 15 minutes. I think 18 minutes is probably my longest video. And the fact that they're accessible at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep and you don't know what's wrong and you feel horrible is one of the most important ways for me to reach the people that matter. And obviously, if they seek out coaching with me, we talk, and I'm willing to coach people individually. But to me, it is both more fulfilling for me And I feel more helpful to others just to do this as a group.
Mhm. That's great. Yeah, it's very important to make things accessible, and when you're working with that demographic, it you're not doing anything until your kids are asleep. I mean, I have a son who's almost 16, but I remember when he was younger, it was like you don't do anything until after they're in bed, and then it's, oh my God, what am I going to do with this, 2-3 hours before I have to go to sleep? Do I call this person back? Do I take a shower? Do I take care of the laundry? And you're trying to cram all these things in. So doing one-on-one coaching could be very challenging during normal business hours.
Right, exactly. And it's also, it takes a lot of energy. You don't, in my opinion, with a quality coach, leave without homework. Homework you gave yourself, if we're being honest,
Right.
that's how the end of the session ends, is you giving yourself homework. And my clients were just coming back, oh, I just didn't have time for it this week. Is this important to you? Yes, it's important to me. I want to feel better, but I just didn't have time this week. And so it's that what matters when you're on the call disappears when, like you said, you're facing that mountain of laundry and your kids screaming and you're exhausted. And even that's part of the reason that I never really developed a specific course or an ebook or any of that kind of stuff, because when I was burnt out, I couldn't even focus on reading. Like that was an absurd concept. And so I had a blog for a long time, and I actually turned a lot of those blog posts into videos, and they're much more successful that way because that takes so much less thought. And we're so used to sitting down and having Netflix to relax and whatever, that if you're already on your computer, what's another, or your phone mostly, what's another 15 minutes that might actually help you when you're upset and worried and stressed and all that.
Absolutely. If you take a quick break to drink a cup of coffee, you could watch a video, and something in that video can help you through something that you're going through. So yeah, your videos are great. I watched a few of them, and I want to circle back to creator burnout, because right at the time that I discovered you, I had just pulled myself out of some major creator burnout. I started this YouTube channel. I had the idea for a YouTube channel for a couple years, and then I had to summon up the courage to actually do the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And then last year I did it under a different name, which was Conquer Your Chaos. And I hadn't figured out exactly what my direction was. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to experiment. And I did interviews and I created content. And then I just had this massive shutdown creatively, and I just realized I needed to take a pause, which has made me realize there's a lot of power in taking a pause. Sometimes you just need to take a step back, and so I just took some time out. I did some major self-care. I set my business on the shelf kind of for a few weeks, and then started regrouping. And from all of that, I started getting clarity again in my direction and rebranded my website, and then decided to get back into YouTube. And so I realized, confidence is a huge part of the themes of the people I work with. And I realized is just so important to me, because that's when you're able to confidently express yourself and confidently express your needs, that eliminates a lot of overwhelm right there. And when you share tips and you see how other people forge their own way and do what feels right for them, it helps you feel okay in doing what's right for you. And so creating that support is my whole mission with this channel. And so when I finally came out of my hibernation with my creator burnout, and I found your video, it spoke a lot to me, and I liked your different angle on it, because there's a lot of things on creator burnout, but you really touched on the emotional piece of all of that. So what is your definition of creator burnout?
Creator burnout, especially right now, it comes with two pieces. It comes with a lot of the creators that the information that's out there is geared towards. We're talking about influencers, YouTubers, social media people trying to build a business for which they need to be creative. That's very much the specific focus of a lot of the information that is out there. And then on top of that, a lot of the information that's out there is geared towards just the burnout section of it. How are you going to deal with your business? How are you going to get yourself better? How are you going to get more time? How are you going to manage your calendar? What do you got to do logistically? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
But just because you get through all that stuff, which is a huge component of creator burnout, because a lot of people are like, oh, hey, look, I have this creative thing. People are really interested. Now I can start making money off of it. And it builds. And a lot of those people never had any kind of business education whatsoever. And it becomes this whole mountain. And sure, that's how a lot of it starts. But what we're not acknowledging on a lot of it is it's not just burnout, right? It's creator burnout. And by being stressed out and burned out, you're stripping your ability to be creative. And that's what really speaks to me, is because I feel like everything, YouTube put out all of this stuff because all of these big people like Alicia Marie and were coming out and saying, I'm burned out. Thomas Frank has a huge video on about how he got burned out. But again, none of it talks about the creative part of it. And we're under the impression that if we can get all this business stuff solved, that suddenly our creativity will come back. Sometimes it does, because creativity does not thrive in stress. And if that was your only source of stress, then sure, maybe it will come back. But that's not the only part of it. And if we only talk about this business building stuff, then we're not acknowledging all the other people that have to be creative in their everyday lives. There are graphic designers and media people, and everyone pretty much has to be creative at some point. Even mom that's at the mall who forgot something that her kid loves and she's got to get through this shopping trip needs to be creative in the moment. And if you're completely burned out and stressed out, absolutely, you're going to really struggle to access that creativity. But that's not the only part of it, because you could get rid of all of that other stress and it may still not come back. And that was what was important to me to talk about in this video, because I felt like we're acknowledging the fact of how hard it is to build a business, but we're not acknowledging the creative side of it. And we're basically excluding a whole chunk of people that really need help. Because if your job demands you to be creative and you're not feeling creative today, that's a problem. And that stress that is caused from thinking that you don't have any more creative thoughts, that it's just gone, you're dried up, or whatever you're telling yourself, is going to stress you out more, and you're going to have less creative feelings. And so I felt like we really needed to discuss that, so that it wasn't just the burnout part of creator burnout. We were really talking to all creators, not just people that suddenly had a viral video and now they have a business.
Yeah, that's all very important, because there isn't that much that I have found that addresses the whole spectrum of creators. And yeah, if you're a mom, you got to be creative with dinner, creative with amusing your kid, on so many levels, but also at work, whether it's creating content for a meeting or creating policies for something, or anything you have to do, even an email.
Right. I mean, problem solving is creativity, right? I mean, when everybody's got to problem solve.
Exactly. So I really like that. So what are some tips that you have for people who are struggling with creator burnout?
Well, the first one, and this is so hard. You're going to be like, fine, that's it, I'm out, don't hang up. But it's to not force yourself to be creative, because the more you force yourself, the less creative you're going to feel. You can engage in strategies that will help you be creative, but saying, that's it, I'm going to sit down at 2:00 for an hour and I'm going to knock this presentation out. If you already have some ideas, that might work. But if you're just staring at a blank cursor, you're just going to keep stressing yourself out. And then what happens is you get angry with yourself because you can't come up with any good ideas because you were burned out when you sat down. And then you start engaging the fight or flight portion of your brain, which shuts down all of your logical thinking and your creativity. And now you're just getting angry and angrier. You're building up all of this negative self-talk and you're spinning. And you're literally going to waste your time, because trying to force yourself creative doesn't B2B creative doesn't work. Your creativity thrives in a place of psychological safety. So if you're talking down to yourself and you're beating yourself up, then you are going to really struggle with that ability to be creative, because you have created a psychologically not safe environment for yourself. And so you'll learn this if you ever find information about like comedic teams or comedy writers. No idea is a bad idea, because you don't want to shut down somebody's creativity. And so if you write something down and you come up with something and you feel like it's junk, and then you start beating yourself up about it, well, now your brain's like, well, why would I bother coming up with anything if I'm just gonna, trash myself when it's all said and done?
Right.
So that's the first part of it. What you can do that will help activate those parts of your brain again are hobbies. That's one of the best things you can do. A creative hobby that is completely outside of the scope of what you're working on. If you're a graphic designer and you're working on a website, go knit or go cook dinner. If you're a YouTuber, walk away from the camera and go practice guitar or something along those lines. But pick something that is not so engaging that it takes everything that you have to focus on it. If you're not a natural cook and you don't have a lot of experience, and sitting down to this recipe is going to take all of your focus, that is not a good option. Pick something that you're good at, that you have practice with. It doesn't even have to be something that you're going to produce something for. You could just sit down and color.
I do that.
Do a paint by numbers. Those diamond paintings are super popular right now. Anything that allows you to focus a little bit, but allows your mind to wander. If you don't have anything like this, a hot shower or a good walk outside is a fantastic way to make that happen. What this does is it calms your brain. It relaxes you. It engages a lot of the parts of your brain that need something to focus on, or they start anxiously worrying about your what you should be doing, your to-do list. What are you going to do tomorrow? Did you pack a lunch? Did you do that laundry? All that kind of stuff. That part of your brain is engaged with what you're working on, and all of the problem solving parts of your brain are active, working on whatever creative thing you put your mind to. So those great ideas you have in the shower, they come because you were spaced out washing your hair. But we hardly have any spaced out time anymore. We don't leave room for our minds to wander. And if you don't have that time, that makes it a really big struggle to come up with a good idea. Because we problem solve in the background. We're creative in the background. And so you need to give your brain some time to just have that background time to essentially rest. I mean, it's self-care for your brain to do those things where you can just kind of go to low power mode, but you're doing something and it feels good for you. It's almost meditative. It's essentially what meditating would be, but a lot of us can't meditate. I have ADHD. I've tried. I can do 5 to 10 minutes and it's a struggle. It takes all the focus. And so that makes it very difficult. And the whole point of that is to not let your mind wander. I'm actually actively asking you to let yourself wander, to daydream, because that's where a lot of those great ideas come from.
I love that. It's permission to wander. And it kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier about recharging. Like self-care isn't selfish, it's recharging. And it's that scientific piece to why creativity can sprout up and flourish when you take a step back and do nothing, nothing,
right.
For a moment. And if you're working in the office, even if you take a walk for 10 minutes, just
Huge.
To step away from that, put on some music that you love, something that just makes you feel good. It can totally be an amazing mental reset that you need just to kind of reset your brain for continuing on that.
Right. And we assume that if we're not doing something with our brain, that we're not being productive, right? If we're not doing some kind of intellectual work, if I'm not actively editing a video or filming a video or writing a script, then my brain's not doing anything. And that's nonsense. Your brain's active all the time, even when you're sleeping. And so your brain is constantly problem solving in the background. If you set a problem to your brain, it doesn't just stop working on it just because you're not actively thinking about it. And I think we have this misconception that if I don't sit here and think about it, if I don't sit here and work on this presentation right now, that I'm not going to get it done. And that's not true. It's, while I don't condone procrastination, I condone creative procrastination. If you are working on a creative thing and it is just not flowing, do not have any problem with getting up and walking away, like you said, and doing something else, and things will start to come to you. Whereas just sitting there and trying to force yourself to go through it is likely not going to solve your problem.
Yeah, I've done those trying to force myself to get through it. And that's why I had to go through a pause for a bit. And I just gave myself permission to just take a pause and just let things flow on their own. And that's when things really started to pick up and flow for me, when I took that, because I just burned myself out and trying to just create on demand, which just does not happen. So. This was great. Before we wrap up, are there any resources that you would like to share with our viewers?
Absolutely. I have the video, which you're going to link below, that we talked about, that has like tons of tips. I think there's like 10 tips in there. So if this doesn't work for you, if something that I said doesn't click with you, there are so many other ways. Never think that there's a one size fit all solution to pretty much anything. You will never see a video where I say, here's the be all and end all tip of X, Y, and Z. It's here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways that you could try. And if something doesn't work, don't ever feel bad about just saying screw it and go do something else. Don't waste your time trying to force something that you think should work because somebody wrote a book about it. I also have another blog post about creativity and more encouraging it in the workplace and encouraging yourself to how to be creative. Just some more tips if you're not burned out, how to sort of ramp up your creativity. And I'll send you that link after this is over. But I also want to recommend a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It is a fantastic resource. Some of the things might feel hokey, but they're actually very effective. Like she has you go on artist dates where you take yourself out and sort of do what I was talking about. You do something that's not related to your current work and you just consume something. You go to an art museum and enjoy that. And I think what she was getting at, without actually knowing the science behind it, was to activate some novel experiences, which is a big problem with the whole creator burnout right now. Is we've been restricted from novel experiences. We weren't allowed to go on vacation. We weren't allowed to go to the museum or concerts or anything like that. And it's difficult to create in a vacuum. Most writers will tell you the first thing they do in the day is read. Because you can't make something from nothing. You need that inspiration from somebody else. And nobody says you need to copy it. It could be a trashy romance novel, who cares? But you can't create output without input. And that's a big struggle we're having right now. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why, when the pandemic hit, apart from all of the other stress, was this lack of novel experiences. And so that's one of the things that she has you do. And there's a lot of other stuff in that book, but I find that to be really helpful for people that really see themselves as artists, that are really trying to build themselves back up.
Great, thank you. I will include the links to all of that. And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, I have my website. It's jesdickerson.com, and that's 1 S. Jes Dickerson. I'm sure you have that link down there, but also,
I'll put the link too.
Yeah, and you can just email me at hello@jesdickerson.com, and I have my YouTube channel, which you'll have the link to from the video. So
I will put all of that in there. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation. And I hope any of you who have watched this feel inspired. And I hope you check out Jes's stuff. And thanks again. And we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.